Hello everyone. We can start the session now. Others can join in. A very delightful evening to all. First of all, welcome back to PsyConnect. I'm Muskan Agarwal and I'm delighted to be here with you again after a short break. Joining me today is a fantastic co-host, Aishwarya, and together we are excited to bring you an engaging session on a topic that is close to our hearts. So, Aishwarya, you can go ahead with the session.
Thank you, Muskandi. We truly appreciate your patience during our break and are delighted to kickstart a series of wonderful webinars and podcast session to reconnect with all of you.
So, now without further ado, let's dive into today's podcast where we will introduce you to our topic and speaker. So, as we all know, the topic of today's discussion that is thriving as a therapist, navigating private practice pathways in India, and for loading us with their invaluable knowledge and information. Here we are having our esteemed guest speaker, Ms. Meghna Motwani ma'am. Meghna ma'am is a highly qualified psychotherapist with a robust academic background, having completed her graduation, post-graduation, and a postgraduate diploma in counseling and psychotherapy from our renowned Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. Since July 2023, she has been practicing as a psychotherapist in private practice, where she specializes in trauma informed and queer affirmative care. She has received extensive training in various therapeutic modalities, including narrative therapy, family and couples therapy, and neurodiversity affirmative training. Her dedication to mental health extends beyond individual therapy. She is set to launch a peer supervision space and offers comprehensive workshops aimed at helping others establish their private work practices. In addition to her clinical work, she has contributed significantly to community projects as a mental health support worker, focusing on marginalized communities within schools. Her commitment to enhancing mental health accessibility and understanding reflects her passion for creating inclusive spaces for healing. Please join me in welcoming Meghna ma'am to our podcast. Ma'am, you can start now.
Thank you so much, Muskan, for the introduction.
Yeah. So, should we start with the first question for today?
Yeah, please go ahead. I guess others would be joining us between. We can sort of proceed with the questions.
Yeah. So, ma'am, can you share your journey into becoming a therapist and like what motivated you to start your private practice?
Um, so my journey as a therapist, I would say, is unlike any other, right? Like the minimum qualification that you need to also call yourself a therapist, it's sort of a master's degree. But what's interesting is the story behind how I got into psychology, and that's eventually how I became a therapist. So growing up, I have just noticed that I have a very natural, flair to hold space for people. Like I would have friends who would just come and like share their things, and would never feel as a judgmental, around me. So I've noticed that, and also I've had a curiosity in sort of understanding the nuances of what people were feeling. What are they going through. Um, and that sort of enriched when I actually met my psychology teacher when I was in school, like after my high school. So, I would just look up to her and I would see this natural glow that she would have, which was unlike any other teacher, and I would be so interested to know, right? Like the warmth that she creates, that people would go and approach her and talk to her, is what basically motivated me to study psychology in the first place and took up the subject and understand, okay, right? Like, is it just the subject that actually makes you, um, more of an impact, to sort of hold space for people. And if I notice that I also were naturally inclined like that with certain skills, how can I use those skills, for people? And psychology was a way through. So that's how I got into psychology. And then I never sort of lost passion for wanting to work with people who would come up with bringing certain challenges that they're facing in life, right? So yeah, I mean, after studying psychology as an optional subject, I chose to take that as, you know, as a mainstream subject. So I completed my bachelor's and master's both in psychology. I also did a diploma after that, and with all of those degree, I was simultaneously doing several trainings and internships. Because that is what gives us also exposure, because our master syllabus is like just theory. It's very certain things, it's not upgraded in our syllabus as well. So I was just looking forward to as many trainings that I can receive, and I got an opportunity to sort of go to Hyderabad. I got selected for a fellowship program in a renowned mental health organization in Hyderabad, where I was given trauma informed training, neurodiversity affirmative training, queer affirmative training, which I believe is really lacking in our syllabus. So after receiving that, I felt, and working with client, I felt like I finally identified my niche, and I can finally call myself therapist, because it's not just I'm diagnosing, or I'm just like labeling clients and helping them. No, I believe that clients are always able to help themselves. It's just that they need a certain guidance. And so yeah, I mean, after those trainings I was able to finally feel that I can not only call myself a therapist, but I am a therapist. So that was my journey into being a therapist. What motivated me setting up a private practice was honestly providing quality care. um, Quality work of mental health service, I believe, is really important. And what I was noticing for myself, that when I have the flexibility of the clients that I want to work with, number of clients that I want to take, or the working hours, or the additional things that I would want to do, if I have that sort of flexibility, I'm able to be more present with my clients. I'm able to sort of give them back more. I'm not burned out. I'm able to manage my energy well. I'm able to upskill, and use that time to sort of enhance my skills. So yeah, the motivation behind private practice was simple, is that if I want to provide quality care work, I sort of have to um, you know just take that step, where I'm able to you know sort of, yeah, just have that kind of flexibility with, which often we do not have that kind of autonomy if working for organization. Not saying that you shouldn't work for organizations, but I believe that in private practice you have more autonomy based on how you would like to work and other things that you would want to do, and save yourself from being burnout as well. And I had a lot of community. I had a lot of people who would were ready to sort of give me guidance around how to manage private practice and everything. So yeah, I just found people who were very much present for me to sort of support me and tell me more about how to set up a private practice, help me if I'm going to face any challenge. So I also met such kind therapists, such kind colleagues. I met, throughout my journey, people who supported me. So that was motivation enough as well to start my private practice. And yeah, providing quality care is I would say, was the priority of beginning my private practice.
Ma'am, our next question is, what do you think is essential qualifications or skill set that are required to start a private practices in India can be like, according to you?
The essential qualifications that is needed for you to call yourself um, a psychologist or a therapist is, minimum, you would need a minimum of a master's degree, right? Without masters, you are not eligible to call yourself a psychologist or even practice psychotherapy, right? However, I would say that even though master is the minimum qualification, you should definitely be able to have more. trainings, or at least some specialization in one of the therapeutic modalities, right? Because that would help you understand also, um, that how therapy really works, because what we read and practically what we do, you would see a wide difference in that, right? So definitely other trainings with masters is certainly required. Um, when it comes to skills, which is required for setting up a private practice, I would say that there are so many skills that one requires. There's a lot of networking skills that you would need. There's a lot of you know interpersonal skills that you would need, like to balance interpersonal relationships. There's a lot of administrative skills that you would require, because once you come into private practice, you're not just being a therapist, you are doing several other things, right? Like you are drafting documents, you are sending emails, you're basically you're taking up every role, right? Like of different other peoples that you notice in a hospital or a mental health institution, right? So you are basically doing everything. So you would require administrative skills. You would also require um, and of course, other than counseling skills, I'm talking about basically what is required in private practice, right? Like so, yeah, I think a lot of yeah, all these skills, is very much required if you are thinking to set up your private practice, is what I would say. And then further, if right, like going with further discussion, if we would be able to sort of discuss briefly about what these skills really mean, we'll proceed with that. But for now, yeah, I think this is the essential qualification and skills required to start private practice in India. Again, we don't have a very um, you know legal body that is regulating therapist practices in India very well. We all know that RCI mostly focus on clinical psychologists. We don't have a well recognized license or any such thing for therapist, right?
Yes.
So ethically practicing is very important. Being connected to people who would help you understand the legalities and ethical practices that one requires to set up a private practice is very required. And that, therefore, I also say that network building is the most important skill when you are starting a private practice.
So, ma'am, what do you think a new therapist who is just starting his or her private practice should take some steps, like some essential steps that he or she should take?
Hmm. uh, I think if you're going to start a private practice, certain steps which is required is first to um, just work with yourself. Right? Like if you're thinking to start a private practice, first is to be confident enough and be committed to this work, right? Because that is very well needed in sort of determining how you are going to take up this work. Um, I think, yeah, on a more serious note, I think what is sort of important, what important steps are required is do your research, right? Like understand the market, understand where um, you come from, what is your geographical location, and based on that, there would be many deciding factors. For example, what is the demand of people from therapy space, right? So do your research. That's a very important step that one has to take, is understand based on the demands of what is like expected from therapy spaces, what mostly population firstly goes to. We have a very invisibilized sort of hierarchy set in place in mental health field as well, right? Like people don't generally come to therapist first. It happens, but it's not a very common occurrence. So people would go to psychiatrists, or people would first go to like a clinical psychologist, and then from there, um, clinical psychologists would are of course going to take up therapy, provide therapy services as well. But again, right, like we have very less number of psychologists uh, per the population that resides in India. So of course therapists are very much needed, but you have to understand that where your client is firstly going to, right? So you also have to connect to those people. You have to do your research. You have to understand. You have to understand what kind of training would you require in order to cater to the people that you want to. And especially if you are looking to catering to the people based on your geographical location, right? Like if you want to set up a private practice in person space, mostly this is what you want to do. um, and then the other is, yeah, you have to identify your niche. That's very important. So niche is something that is not just related to understanding what kind of cases you want to work with, but niche is also what kind of population you want to work with, right? So it's a very broader term, and you have niche is very important so that you narrow down your area of focus so you can also provide better, right? So identifying your niche becomes another important step as you are starting private practice. um, Other than that is, yeah, just have a business model sort of in mind. um, when I say that have a business model, what I really mean is just know what is important, what is required in sort of running this private practice, right? So that would include, um, having a space for yourself. Um, so whether you want in-person space or whether your practice is going to be fully online, what resources are required for that? How many, how much finances is required for that? Business model can entail a lot of things, and it's a very ongoing process. So I would keep that for later, but I would say just, yeah, like have a business model in mind, right? Like how you would want to start. The other is understand the legal framework of the sort of space where you are in. So in India, I think the steps that therapists would require in setting up a private practice is understanding the regulation that govern our therapy practices. And it is different area wise as well. But as I said, in India, right now, we don't have a proper, body that is also keeping a check in work of, or giving a proper recognition to therapist, right? But there's definitely you have to check with the regulations um, that is required for therapists to conduct their private practices in India. So yeah, read about it. Other steps is, yeah, networking and marketing, which I think we would further be discussing. So I'm not going into depths of it, but I think I'm using the word networking again and again because it is very important, whether you are in private practice or not. Whether you are, just thinking of working with clients, thinking of doing community work, thinking of doing any mental health or advocacy based or based on wherever you see yourself, whether in hospital setting, whether in clinical setting, whether in NGOs, social work, wherever. Networking is going to help you and put yourself out there. So networking and marketing. And then the last but the most important, as we say, last but not the least, is sort of having all the documentation in place. So if you're thinking to start a private practice, one of the important steps is have all the documentation, all the forms, all the forms, which is basically asking for consent from clients, explaining them the um, process of therapy, explaining them your process and your work, right? So all of those forms, all of those documents, crisis intervention documents, um, emergency documents that we should have, you all need to have that in place before starting your private practice. So these are the few important steps. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely so much within all of these pointers, but I'm keeping it sort of precise for now, as you asked steps. So yeah, these are the steps, and again, there's no one way to go about it. You can take all of these steps together. You can take all of these steps slowly. It's up to you. There's no rushing into these, but yeah, these are the steps that is needed.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much for describing every bit of information so precisely. Even we are so glad that we already got an entire, overview of our podcast where we will lead in future, right? So thank you so much for that. And yeah, myself is Nandini, and I'm a bit late in this session to host it. I apologize for that, first of all. I noticed that
That's
you were
okay.
talking about the niche, the right niche that we have to
Yeah.
choose.
So I just have a random question like, what is the proper time whenever a person is going towards or planning to start his private practice? What is the
Hmm.
right time until which he had to fix his specialization? Like,
Okay.
whether being a master's or pursuing a diploma or any higher studies. I hope you're getting.
Yeah. I mean, the right time to have specialization to sort of get into private practice um, is sort of like there's no one answer to it, right? Like it's not as black and white. But I would say that if you are going to start a private practice right after your master's, that can pose a lot of challenge. Because if I'm looking at master's curriculum and the internship opportunities, um, I believe that you may be inclined to a certain specialization already, which is either clinical, which is either counseling, which is either applied psychology, or other. But there is definitely more trainings, right? Like, and uh, it should come from within, right? Like how much prepared you feel with what, again, cases you want to work on, and based on that you should take proper trainings and have a specialization, right? And what is more accessible to you. So for example, I've seen a lot of people running towards CBT, and doing CBT for every like case that comes to them. But are we really going into the depths of where CBT as a modality is helping and where is it not? Because I've seen a lot of cases that comes to therapists you know, um, are nowhere like without trauma, right? So if we are just taking one approach, if you're just using, let's just say, CBT, it might not work, right? For every client. So when it comes to specialization, I would say first you have to understand to identify your niche, right? Understand what skills is required, and then you can specialize based on the cases that you are picking up. What is the need of the hour? What is the need of the client, right? So it has to come from understanding all of that. So there is no one right time, but I would say um, don't step into private practice right after your masters, or even if you are doing, that's okay, but there would be challenges. um, but I would say if you are stepping into private practice right after your masters, um, your trainings, your specialization, um, you know it really doesn't it has to it has to really work on, like, it has to really be based on the skills also that you possess, right? Like, because you can have all specialization, you can have all theory set in place, but as I said before as well, right, like you can master all techniques, but when you are practically working with a client, what you need is to connect with them, and do you have, you possess those skills, right? Like, so work on skills. Specialization is an ongoing process. You can keep learning, you can keep brushing up your skills, you can keep having several trainings, you can keep um, you know just building community that would help you sort of grow and um, have an expertise knowledge in certain areas of focus, right? So yeah, I would say definitely see what you're interested in. um, Take, choose your specialization based on that, and start whenever you feel like you are ready. You will already be exposed to sort of working with clients during your internships maybe, or during your other trainings, and that will help you sort of um, know, right? Like, um, what your specialization also has to be. So for example, I am a counseling psychologist and I'm a psychotherapist, but a lot of people are inclined to, you know doing diagnosis, doing assessment, so they go further after masters, they go and take up clinical psychology, and it's a very intensive course as well, right? So if you want to go into that full clinical field, you have to select your path that way, right? So I would say, and then you can start private practice as well. There's plenty of clinical psychologists who also start private practice, and the advantage they have is they can, diagnosis, they can do the assessment set in place. But if you are more interested again in working with clients, not necessarily diagnosis and everything, don't run after those, right? Like, so specialize in what you are interested in, what wherever you feel like is your calling, is what I would say. So yeah, take time
Right.
with it.
Definitely, I agree with you completely, ma'am. We sometimes often try to, have every every sort of things all together. But that's true. Having a single specialization in any area gives us more power to work more perfectly onto that field, right? We were talking about the business plan, right? So we all know that starting a private practice on its own requires a lot of capital from your own side, because sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. So what is the entire plan of having a complete business strategy before going into that private practice? How should one like completely prepare a baseline to start the practice on his own?
Hmm. Um, I think having a business model sort of, is what could governs the whole flow of your private practice. Um, but all I can say sort of here is that, there's so much to learn as you continue and as you start your practice, right? The learning don't stop, the business model don't stop. Sort of being creative on it doesn't stop. But before you are starting, I think, as I already mentioned, um, yes, it is definitely about finances, especially if you are thinking about having an in-person space, right? So you have to look for what you can manage. And also, if you're looking for in-person space, you have to connect with people, with legal officers, or maybe who would help you understand the taxation policies as well. For example, for me, I mostly practice online, right? So my business model was based completely on the online mode, right? Like, so I had not much worries about registering for the organization or any such things like that. But if you're thinking of an in-person space, you would have to have a more profound business model, right? Like, yeah, I would say, connecting with people again, it's very important. Having your documentation in place, that is very important. You can't miss out on any documentation if you are looking forward to, let's just say, working with children in private practice. You would require different documentation for that, because you would need consent of the parents. So that is a more elucidate sort of form, informing the parents about what therapy is like and everything. So with minors, again, your work, your documentation process would look very different. With adults, it would look very different. Right? So your business model has to be based on, not just the finances, but also how you are thinking of carrying your private practice and who you are thinking to work with, right? So a lot of um, things, you would have to think based on that. A lot of planning you have to do based on that. Yeah, that's all I can say for now. And as I said, when you are thinking of a business model, keep these pointers in mind about space, about the modality used, about the mode of the session used, about um, you know this thing, what was it, um yeah, the kind of cases you want to take up, the clients that you want to work with. So all your documentation, everything would be based on that. So this is what is required when you're thinking of a business plan. This is what is required when you're thinking of a business model, right? Like, um it's for you, private practice has to feel like, um it's an investment. You're giving your heart and soul into that. So definitely take time to think on a business plan. But it's not that, in starting you have to think everything, right? Like for me especially, I learned and I brought a lot of changes in my business planning as I started working, as I came to know, oh, this is also what is needed, this is what I have to change, okay, this is what client I'm working with. And so, what kind of format is more preferable, what how I should update my documentation, how I should I update my policies, all of that I learned as I started private practice. So yeah, I mean, few things you would learn when you would start. So yeah, that's it.
Ma'am, you covered it so well. So, as you have been mentioning about networking and right marketing strategies, so we would love to know about it, like how one can learn it if that qualities are not there from beginning. So, how one can learn it, and what role does it play to practice a successful private practice? Like,
Oh, yeah, networking is very important. I think that plays a very bigger role in how successful your private practice is going to be. Um, so you asked me like, how can we network, right? And I think if put it into simple words, I would just suggest like put yourself out there. You know, bring sort of building a strong referral network mean that you're putting yourself out there. Um, it also means that how well your name is being circulated, right? Like whether you're a clinical psychologist, whether you're a therapist, whether you are providing a certain kind of care, right? Like let's just say you're providing just queer affirmative care. So you have to put yourself out there, you have to engage, you have to go to people, and let them know about your work. And these people not necessarily has to be just your colleagues, just other therapists. These uh, people who you are engaging with and talking with and putting yourself out there to can be anyone, right? Like you go to the gym and you have a gym trainer, talk to that gym trainer, right? Like tell them about that you are a therapist, or ask them maybe, a lot of people come to gym and they come to relieve their stress. Have heard such stories? And they would start sharing. People love to talk, right? So it's not just when you're networking, you have to limit yourself. That I am only going to network in certain therapy spaces, or in my maybe college, or to my professors. No, networking would mean anybody around you, right? Like very shamelessly talk to your relatives, talk to your friends, talk to your family about the work that you do, and tell them that they can approach and they can refer anybody who they think is going through something and just want to talk to you, right? So because you don't know where the referral would come from, you don't know um, you know who is really looking for you, right? So you have to go and look for them, you have to go and put yourself out there, you have to go and tell people that hey, you exist and you do this work, because otherwise people will not know. And so that is either you go and you talk and you become a part of these spaces, or a lot of people start having a social media platform before they're entering into the journey of becoming a therapist, just studying in their bachelor's or master's. They build a sort of you know social media their profile on social media platform. So your LinkedIn, your Instagram, or whatsoever is also a good way to sort of put yourself out there and network through people, right? How else? I think, yeah. And if you have, as psychologists, we just don't have one sort of area of focus. For example, you might be into writing, you might be into content creating, you might be into sort of journaling, you might be into writing papers. So yeah, just if you're good at it, if you're good at any content writing about mental health advocacy, or anything related to human behavior, related to psychology, related to um, challenges that maybe our generation faces based on what is happening in the socio political system, or environment that we are living in. how does that affect mental health? Anything that you feel like you can sort of mm, you know write, or have ideas that you can sort of share, do that. A lot of people engage like that. They found a local newspaper or anything, and they write columns for them, or just online post it, or write for NGOs maybe. So networking, again, right, like, when it comes to that, I would say don't limit yourself. You are, if you are networking, especially, you have to put yourself out there by saying you are a therapist, which means that you work with human behavior, and everywhere humans are present, right? Which means everywhere is your opportunity to network. So use that, do that, talk to people, tell them that this is the work that you do. um, and yeah, I think this is the best way I would say to network. you know Formally, you can sort of email your colleagues and catch up to other therapists and talk about their work, let them know about your work. But informally, there is a lot of spaces that you can attend to and sort of tell about your work. That is how, in my opinion, that's the best way to network, is what I would say.
Great, definitely, sure, ma'am. In fact, we all like we always have the opportunity to talk to anyone. We in fact have so many people in our communities, wherever we are, in our colleges, in our working place.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you so much. Also, I would like to request to the audience, those who are having any kind of queries or they want to ask in between anything to ma'am, you can keep typing your queries in the chat box. Also, we are having an eyes on that also. Yeah. So now deviating a bit from the entire approach to a private practice, uh, right now we are seeing a lot of digital therapies methods are also evolving, right? People are using chatbots. Someone is innovating, AIs to provide mental health support to people. So I would like to ask, how do you see if there is a balance between the traditional therapy methods or and the digital methods that nowadays are prevailing into the current scenario? So what are your views on that?
And that's an interesting question, actually. Um, with sort of changing world and growing technology, we definitely have more accessibility, is what I would say. However, in my opinion, I think nothing can really beat the traditional methods of therapy, right? Um, when it comes to digital approach, I would say it's certainly cost effective, it's accessible, it is more appealing as well at times. Um, but what I have noticed, especially in my experience, in working as a therapist in private practice around an year, is that I do have a lot of people coming to me who specifically look for online sessions because that is more preferable for them. Um, and of course, when we meet a right fit for ourselves, right? Like meet a right therapist. It may not be obviously available in the city that we are in or in the area that we are in. So online helps, but then there are definitely people who specifically look for working one-to-one session, and they want an in-person space. They maybe don't have the privilege to sit at their own homes and sort of take therapy sessions from there, right? Like, so they would want an in-person space. So it is very, again, right, like individual to individual. um, but I would say that nothing can really be a substitute for therapy, right? Like, you're no AI, no chatbot, no this any other apps that you use where they have AIs to sort of interact with you will do the work of a therapist, right? Because you would know if you are a psychologist, if you are working with clients, if you are observing maybe in your internships how therapy works, you would understand that there is a very human aspect to what helps us connect with our clients, right? And that just can't happen with AI. Um, to right, like, and this sort of question, right, like it made me sort of think, um, um, quote that Carl Jung also used, saying that, know all the theories, master all the techniques. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but I think it goes something like that. But as you touch a human soul, just be another human soul. And that is what is of the utmost importance, and or lies on the basis of your connection with the people that you are going to work with. And I'm not saying this just the clients that you work with, I'm saying that other spaces that you are also a part of, where you are doing your mental health advocacy work, whether you are doing therapist work, whether you are doing group work, whether you are facilitating something as a mental health professional for others. um, it has to come, it has to be structured, it has to come from what you know of what is the requirement of people there. And that comes with observation, that comes with a very connect, that comes with actually you talking and really being a witness to your clients or the people that you are working with, witness to their stories, witness to their pain, witness to their resilience. And AI cannot do that, right? So of course, I'm not discouraging the use of that, because there are now more mental health apps where that helps you check in with your progress, or maybe helps you um, set reminders for your mental health activities, for self care activities, to help you sleep. There are more meditation apps that gives you access to such meditative strategies or mindfulness techniques. So of course use that, but again, nothing substitute for therapy, right? And yeah, just that balance, I guess, comes from understanding the requirement of the hour. And I guess we are all sort of managing that in our own ways. I can't say there's like a balance, but I would say that if there is so much of dependency towards AI or tech, and you're thinking what's the need of like therapy, if I have these free apps and all of that, um, it's sort of not going to work. And if you're also depending too much on the fact that it is only through therapy that I'm going to get better, or like it is only through one person helping me, without sort of working on yourself outside of therapy space, or let's just say taking what you have learned in therapy outside of other space, that again, right, like both of these extreme things won't work. So I think that the use of digital platform is helpful when one is outside of therapy, and they're doing this extra work, and using um, you know these apps or AIs, to help them when there is no um, this sort of connection present, this sort of therapy spaces is present. So mix of blend of both is very much, I think, the need of the hour, and that's how we balance, is yeah what I think. I hope that answers the
Yeah,
question.
definitely, definitely. This answered my question really well. Thank you so much, ma'am. And now, since we are talking about you were talking about some mindfulness practices that
Mm.
digital platforms can also provide us. So I think this was in terms of for the patients and clients, right? Now, being specific for a therapist's point of view, like what we
Mhm.
see sometimes in a 9 to 5 job, the person who is an employee or some kind of thing, so
Yeah.
they also have a responsibility for that 8 or 9 hours only, right? But when we are driving our own practice, everything is our own, every responsibility is our own, then how do a therapist try to maintain this work balance within while maintaining his own practice and looking out other stuffs also? So in short, what is the work life balance with you? How do you manage everything? How do you address your issues?
Yeah. Yeah, again, interesting question is how do therapists sort of manage this work-life balance? Yeah. So let's sort of make this a little engaging because it's just feels like I'm answering. But to those sort of attending also, I want to know, right? Like when you say work-life balance, what comes to your mind?
It's a time for
Like,
interaction. Anyone, if here
yeah.
wants to answer this question, you are free to answer.
I don't think work in terms of just, let's just say you are having a job or you're doing something. Let's just say even take your work as like you're studying right now. If most of you are in your masters per se, like take that as work, and then so how do you manage this work life? Like what does it mean when we say work life balance? What does that look like really?
I think
Um,
Sujir have raised his hand. Sujir, you can go
yeah.
ahead if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry.
Yes, yes. My name is Sajir. Uh, I'm
Sorry, sir.
somebody who has started pursuing psychology as a course and a career in my 40s. So I look at something like work and life not as a balance. I look at work life as an integration. I mean, they are
Yeah.
not, as long as they are not two separate things and they are an expression of yourself in your work, then you don't need to entirely balance it. It balances itself. You don't need to look entirely to look for ways in balancing it. So you have to balance. It balances itself, is what I feel, because it becomes an expression of yourself, the work, and you are making meaning out of the work. Then you will be able to find balance out of the work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for actually saying that. And I really like when you said it's about integration more than sort of balancing. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Anyone else want to share their ideas? It's just a more of like a host and a speaker session. It's about you also. You are just free to tell your ideas also.
If
Okay, ma'am.
anything is coming, you can sort of drop in the chat as well. That's fine. Um, I sort of agree to what Sujir also said because, for me, I used to think work-life balance is kind of a myth itself. Like, what balance, right? Like, especially if you're working, and I'm not just talking here right now about private practice per se. I'm talking about, let's just say, if you're in a very corporate setting, there's a lot of things which is not in your control, right? Um, Work in sort of today's this lifestyle that we and then sort of just generation and like work is sort of everywhere and it's being prioritized definitely because we have to also uh, have like a thriving life, and what is like how do we get the capital, right? Like it's we are working and everything, but again, right, like a lot of things is not in our control, the working hours, the um you know how much the workload is. Sometimes all of that gets so difficult to manage. As for therapists, I really feel like, again, like how you were saying, no, Nandini, right? Like um even if you are um sort of taking out the number of working hours, somewhere in your head you're constantly thinking about how is my work going, how are my clients, maybe how is the session today, and everything runs in your mind constantly, right? So I would say, right, like to answer this question is what I have in mind is that again, you can right, like what Sujit was also saying, that maybe it will balance itself out, but for me, what we need to sort of prioritize is a very strong boundary setting for ourselves, right? Like where does your work ends, um, and where does like sort of you um, start, where yourself is not sort of connected with this work, I mean, it's going to always be there, right? Of course, like we are talking about it, you cannot just mm, erase your sort of work self from your personal life, or your personal self from your work self. But what is required is like a super strong boundary setting, right? Like, okay, the number of working hours, when are you going to sort of take emergency cases, do you have so this is about work. Then in life, I believe, again, do you have spaces where you are able to also vent, and just be yourself, where you are able to access joy, where you are able to sort of express your emotions, um, so again, work life balance, to me, what comes to mind when I hear that is that, again, you set up a strong boundary between your work self and your personal self. You think about, so personally also, what you are experiencing, the people that you are connected with, is also shaping who you are, right? So definitely, if your work, especially as a therapist, sort of entails you doing the advocacy, um, it is going to be tough if you have people around you who doesn't you know understand mental health, or say, अरे ये क्या ही है, depression हो गया, आप आपके काम का कोई scope भी है क्या? So if you have people around who are constantly like discouraging you, it is going to show up in your work, maybe in certain ways. I'm not saying necessarily in a bad way, but is it motivating you, is it not motivating you, right? Like, so again, you have to really define yourself, and understand that your personal space also have to uplift you in a way where you can show up in work, in a way where you are more present, and you are motivated. Work also has to be supported in ways when that you feel satisfied in your work, and so you can show up when you're satisfied with work. That's when you can show up in your personal life also with utmost satisfaction, and engage, you know and so there has to be set like a boundary, right? Like, and it's, again, for me, it's also like like balance is kind of a myth, right? Like, it's there, but you just have to know that, especially with the work that we do, is very confidential, right? So with work, you would have to have work colleagues, again, right? Like, where you can just discuss work and not bring it into your personal life, because it's also very confidential work that we do. Um, and in personal life, again, as I said, um, what is your connection with other people, like what space you are in, what kind of um, uh, you know things you are hearing about your own field, all of that would have an impact as to how you show up in work. So yeah, just right, like, you have to really integrate with who you want to see yourself as, how you want to develop, how you want to enrich as a therapist, and that would require you to make changes in your work and in your personal life, and that is what would help you sort of create the balance between work and life. Just don't make work your life, right? I think I'm saying this because I'm sort of going a little off track, but I'm saying this because recently we have a lot of people in power, a lot of what's called um, like philanthropists, right? Like, and others, right? Like, in corporate world, which are saying 90 hours of work is important, work on Sundays also. And like, no, please don't do that. That thinking is really poisonous, right? Like, we are constantly sort of putting in the labor, and if you don't have the time to take breaks, if you don't have the time to also um, be able to sort of hold on to some joy, this field itself is going to burn you out, right? Like, you have to fill your cup in order to give back. You can't just so no so, recently I've been hearing, and recently there was this LNT chairman only, like Mr. Subramaniam saying something like, I am very upset at, I cannot have people working on Sundays. And like, what are you like? What is this thinking? Right? Like, we don't need that kind of thinking. And if we have people like that with that kind of mindset, like that, we are not going to achieve work life balance. We are only going to be burned out. So yeah, we also need like it's not an, I feel like it's not an individual issue. It's really like in which environment, in which political environment we are also living, so as a private practitioner, you may have certain flexibility, is what I would say. And so maybe work life balance is a little, yeah, easier. Okay. Yeah. Anybody has anything
You
to
just
add
said
on to that? Like, I don't know. Sajid, I would be really sort of interested to see if you have something to add on, and what do you think? And then please others also just chip in.
Uh, I would like to add on to it a bit. I'm somebody who has uh, been part of corporate world, NGO world, as well as working in the government sector before I took up psychology as my main pursuit in the past 4 years. So I have always felt that. As long as your work uh, you are able to make meaning out of it, uh, it kind of brings a lot of meaning to your overall life. You cannot
Definitely.
find your meaning and purpose. You'll have to make your meaning and purpose with whatever you are engaging in. If it is your work, your personal life, then comes the real peace and tranquility that you can have in whatever you are engaging in. And as therapists, we should be doing the work on ourselves first before we do the work on others.
Definitely, definitely. I think that's the motto that all of us should take away. Like, work on ourselves first, and then sort of step into this field and be able to work with others. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for sharing your experience of the corporate world, working with NGOs, and then getting into psychology field. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
Shoki, you have something to say. You can unmute yourself. Please go ahead.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'd like to start by really.
It's very faint, though. No?
Oh, okay. How about now?
Can you speak a bit louder if it is possible for you?
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yeah, great, great.
Okay, okay. So I'd really like to start by thanking Meghna ma'am for such an insightful session, because everybody talks about the skills that you need to start a session and all, but nobody talks about the legal aspect of it, the documentation and everything. That's, I think, this is the first time that I'm actually hearing about it from an actual practitioner. So that is really great. And also, I just want to add on that point. How do I balance between the two? So I have always been somebody. Oh, is it okay if I switch on my camera?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's absolutely acceptable. Please do it.
Okay, so I have always been somebody who hyperfixates on work a lot. Like, I am always trying to upskill myself. Like, there's a thing we all know about it, imposter syndrome. So everybody, I feel like in our field, tries to work through that, and I do too by looking for opportunities. And because masters is so not enough, like you said, they don't teach us enough in masters, and we definitely can't step into, at least that is what I feel. I personally feel like I am not ready to start my practice right away. So I am somebody who works a lot, who does a lot of research, all of that, puts in a lot of work. But I feel like the things that I used to do before, I have stopped doing those things quite a lot. And okay, things are better now, but Like a year ago, a year ago, I couldn't really do anything at all. Um, I got the BHU gold medal, but I didn't really feel very happy because, well, it was a good achievement, but it cost me a lot, I felt. So now what has helped is kind of understanding and acknowledging that maybe it's okay if sometimes I'm not able to give time to some other things,
Yeah.
and being understanding to yourself. Like I don't want to beat myself up every time I kind of on some leisure activity that I was doing. Sometimes it's okay. So even that has helped. Like like Sir said, integrating between the two. So
Yeah.
that helps understanding that it's okay if sometimes you're not able to balance both of those things. And I also kind of have some people in my life now who ask for attention, ask for my presence, and that helps too because now you know that okay, people need you now, so you be there for them, you make time. So that also helps, and I think that is how I deal with it now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, better in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. That sounds like it's you finding value in something and then sort of it becomes easy, right? Like if it's aligning with your values of what you want to, what you value and what you give meaning to. So that
Yeah.
makes it easier for you to. Yeah, that's nice. I would also like to add, that like how therapist also manages this the work and life thing because yes, for us we also might have to leave certain things and um, you know or maybe just again, right, like it is individual to individual, but I would say a lot of, for me especially, a lot of or I believe in anyone who is a therapist, right, like just a lot of supervision spaces helps a lot. Peer supervision spaces helps a lot because you're having a community of like-minded people who is also sharing that the feelings that you get as a therapist, whether of not being good enough or feeling like an imposter, it's very natural to show up and how to work with that. The other is to take this up in our own therapy spaces, right? Like, so for example, I um, cannot think working as a therapist without taking or going to my own therapy space, because a lot of time this work really triggers you at times, whether it can be a story, it can be a person, it can be anything that evokes some strong emotion in you. And it's not that you can work with that in supervision spaces or on a one-to-one thing, because it's your personal stuff. And so take it in that in therapy is, I think, what helps this integration as well, at least for me. And I feel like most of the therapists that I have had the honor to sort of work with, this has really helped in sort of working with our own feelings of imposter or other things that might come up, supervision and therapy. So thank you for bringing that up. I think I was able to relate, so I just talk a little bit more about how do I work with it. But it was glad to hear you. So
Really.
perfect.
Now we are going to take a couple of last questions and then you guys will be able to ask any of your doubts. So I would like to request Aishwarya, please put forward the question.
First of all, thank you, Shoki and Sajir sir, for sharing your experience. It's like it really added to our insights. So, ma'am, as you were talking about, like we can for a therapist session is also required for a listener. We can say for even for a listener is required. So, can you just like tell some other ways for a therapist to maintain his or her like mental health also? Because like it's really very important to first of all fill our own cup, then we'll be able to like pour to our clients. So can you just suggest some
Yeah.
ways?
Yeah. I think I would say the same thing, right? Like how therapist manages their mental health is um, through support system. And we all require support system to sort of function and thrive in whatever we are doing. So as therapist, my support system entails peer supervision space, because private practice especially can be a very isolating experience for you. All the feelings that you get, you don't know where to take that up. Even if you have your own therapy, that's one space, right? But if you're not accessing your own therapy space, it can be really difficult through working with the feelings or taking up certain cases, or listening or being witness to people's pain, because you might be sort of taking it in without understanding how to, um, set a boundary, without understanding how to, even if you have skills, if you are not, if you do not have a strong support system, if you do not have a peer supervision space, if you do not have any supervision space, if you're not going and bringing this into your own supervision spaces, if you're not going to your own therapy, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to continue this work for long. Um, and so for me, I believe having a strong support system, having peer supervision space, having therapy, having maybe colleagues in this field who you can just chill and talk with, um, because again, it's different from peer supervision spaces, but what talking to colleagues would do is that, because they would understand, right? Like they would literally, um, like you all are living the same life. So what happens is that you can talk about the burnout, you can talk about maybe certain triggers, you can talk about common feelings that comes up, and that way also you will feel supported, right? And then you share with each other what helps. So another, so these are very important in sort of how therapists should work on in their mental health, focus on their mental health. The other things is, I would say, take self-care days, take vacations. A lot of therapists comes into this feeling of guilt. Oh my God, I can't take a day off other than maybe the regular day offs that they might have, whether on a weekday or a Sunday. But other than that, they are like blindly, oh, I'm going on a 1 week break. What would happen? This, that, and like, no, you deserve a break, and your work has enabled your clients to sort of also know that you equally deserve to sort of go break, and they can manage well. And if not, then you would be able, you would be providing them with a substitute, right? Like your maybe a colleague that would help them if within that break something comes up. But this feeling of this guilt, or this, oh, what would happen, like the world is not going to end if you're going to take a break, right? Like, so have vacations, have self-care days, and these are, and self-care days would look, can look based on whatever your ideas of self-care are, right? Like, so for me, for example, you're just like going out looking, at historical places. That is how I feel most rejuvenated. So taking self-care days or meeting a friend or all of that is very important to just focus on your mental health. If you are not including self-care days, mental health days, vacations, in your schedule, it's going to drastically impact your mental health. So don't, so just keep in mind that this is what is important. That is what I would say. I think I already mentioned therapy and supervision space, and I'm sort of emphasizing and saying it again and again because, um, you know we are nothing, as mental health professional, if we are not, for a, in our own therapy or working in ourselves, and b, having a strong support system through supervision or peer supervision spaces. I would rather say in more than individual supervision, peer supervision spaces helps a lot, because you're getting to a, connect with a lot of therapists, network with a lot of therapists, hear them out, hear yourself out, understand that what are the common challenges that therapists face. Do not feel isolated in those feelings. And peer supervision is great with sort of helping you whatever stuckness you may feel as a therapist. So yeah, I think these are very important steps to take.
Ma'am, as you mentioned about self-care days and vacations, so there are many therapists who feel guilty if they are taking vacations or cutting off their client. Like for them, if we can also include like work-life balance. So for them, it feels like if some client is calling at 11 p.m. and at night, so for them it's really very difficult to not attend that call. So, how much important it is for a therapist to set that boundary, like a client, how much time needs to attend client, and then his own life, how much he needs to focus. Like setting boundaries, basically, I want to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and that's really important. Thank you for sort of putting this up. Again, there's a lot of nuances to what this may, that maybe 11 p.m. text holds, right? How how, like, is it again, right? Like, if what is the context of that email, right? Like, if the client is telling you, and then I've had these cases as such that the client is like highly, it's like suicidal ideation is present, and now they want to act on that. What is mentioned again in that email, and of course it's going to create a lot of distress within you. And so how you act on it is how much you have, again, be a part of these spaces and know how to work through such challenges. So again, if it's um like alert email like that, of course you are going to address it and like do something. You can't just say it's not my working hours and I'm not going to, when the client is saying, hey, like, I'm really feeling like I kill myself right now. So that's where you take action based on the policy that we have. We are going to check in with them. We are going to say that, hey, can I call your emergency person? um, because and if you do not respond, I might have to take that decision for you. you know and then these are already discussed when you're starting therapy, right? But if it's 11 p.m. text like, hey, I want a session tomorrow and this that, like, of course, that's why I said take your own therapy, because that's how you would work on your discomfort and this sort of the feelings that come with, oh, I have to respond to this email, right? Like, no. If it's like 11 p.m. text like, hey, can we have a session tomorrow, and even though you have space, there is no need to sort of respond to that email, especially if that is not your working hours, right? Like, so you respond to your emails in your working hours, right? Like, so like whatever, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., or for how long ever you work, that is when you and boundary setting is again not a one time thing, right? Like, I told my clients that, hey, this is my working hours, please email me in that time. The clients are going to work you, sort of not work you, but like send you emails around work in your non-working hours as well. It's you who would have to talk to yourself and say, hey, it's not in my working hours, it's not urgent, I do not have to respond, I do not owe them that. And I just like respond to them not out of obligation, respond to them because that is what is needed. And so what is needed is you respond to them in your own working hour time, right? So email them the other morning that, hey, it was last minute, but I have a space for you, or email them that, hey, it was last minute, and I saw your email, and you know this is my working hour, and as soon as I saw, I responded with, it's not possible today, right? Like, so again, context of the email would definitely matter in how you're going to respond to it, but setting boundaries definitely important. If you have such interaction, especially with some clients, this is going to be there where they would, and especially if you're a therapist who share maybe your work number as well, not just email but number, WhatsApp as well. So they might text you saying, hey, this session was like that, something came up, just a reflection. And that is okay, you can read, but there's no need to sort of respond to it, because the more you go on responding, you are yourself breaking that boundary and teaching them it is okay for you to respond. So boundary setting is more of a you thing. It's not expectation from the other person. It is what expectations I have from myself and what are my non-negotiables that I shouldn't um, sort of undo that, like, don't. So yeah, I think it's very important and therapist, again, it's a constant work. So yeah, two things, the context would matter, and other things that, yeah, we don't like respond in your non-working hours if it's not urgent.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yes, Sajisa, you have a question?
My query is, as somebody who's embarking on the private practice in psychotherapy, what I'm trying to do is have an integrative approach where I stick to mostly cognitive behavioral or solution focused therapy as the entry point, and if the case entails to delve into more of the psychoanalytic and psychodynamic approaches to go deep into bringing that transformative personality level changes. For these kind of an integrative approach, are there any specific courses or curriculums available that one can pursue? That is one question. And another thing is, in order to get visibility, with a wider audience beyond the just word of mouth publicity? Are there online platforms or spaces where you can present yourself as a therapist who is offering services where you could get a response? You're not one among the crowd, but you can still be get that visibility.
Yeah. Thank you for sort of putting that question up. I'll respond to the latter first. So the online platforms is what I'm going to answer first, and with the courses I'll respond later, right? So with online platforms, there are platforms like MindClan. Even I recently sort of approached to them, and I'm in the process of getting my profile uploaded there. Mindclan is a platform that have a list of therapists, um, again, who have a trauma informed stance and are queer affirmative. Again, that's not a necessarily requirement, but um, they check with your educational qualification. A short interview is happening where they check with your qualification and your stance as a therapist, what you think about diagnosis, etc., how you uh, carry your private practice, and after that they send you a very detailed information of how to get your profile uploaded on their platform. So anybody checking, for example, I am from Varanasi, so anybody checking on Mindclan platform, selecting city Varanasi, it will show a list of therapists enrolled in their platform. So, like, just say my name would come up. I'm in the process of it right now. It hasn't happened. It's a little long, but that's one platform, and I have seen a lot of um, people who come through therapist through using Mindclan platform. So you can register yourself as individual therapist. You can register yourself as if you're a facilitator of, let's just say, a group therapy or a support group as well, right? So other works that you do. Other than Mindclan, there is therapiers. There is uh, so I'll send a list, right? Like, so there are platforms like that where you can actually register yourself, and um, you can even share the link where your profile is uploaded to other people, and that they'll open the link and they'll have all your information. Yeah, right. So your time is also reduced as sending individual client all the email and details about you, because that link would entail everything once it's uploaded. And of course there's a lot of visibility once your profile is uploaded on such a bigger platform like that, right? um so yeah, with so there's Mindhand and there's Therapiers, and then there's plenty of others like that. About the courses, um so with psychoanalytic work, there is I'm just forgetting the name. I'll send it to you. Share me your email ID. There is that a psychoanalytical association itself that also offers a fellowship program um, to folks, and they provide scholarship also. It's not 100% scholarship, but they do. So you can check there. Again, I'm forgetting the full name, but they're on Instagram. They have their own website, so you can check everything. There are definitely courses again. Then there are courses. I would say take with right, like, just don't go after. Um, like collecting certificates and all of that. Like, that's what we do when we were in our masters, and we're running after certificates and right, like collecting all those certificates and honestly learning nothing. But there is this therapist. Uh, so there's one therapist who's an Nimhans alumni, Pratik Sharma, um, who has done this fellowship from the Psychoanalytic Association, and now teaches the same. um, may not be able to offer you a formal, like a diploma or anything, but he runs classes and those are very nice. I've attended one session myself. And then there is another therapist as well, with the name on Instagram Lost and Found Psychotherapy, who also uses psychoanalytic framework in their therapy sessions, and also does workshop on that. So right, like what is level 1 training, level 2 training based on that. um, so definitely there are online courses, and these are run by such um like um uh, therapists who uses intersectional approach in their therapy spaces as well, and that's why I even recommend them, right? Like because um, they understand intersections as they are using modality, whether if it is psychoanalytic or let's just say the new models like CBT and everything that are coming right now, the cognitive, right? So I would say that yes, look for them, and definitely you can learn more about the courses that they provide. So these are very nice actually. And online platforms, again I'll share, but Mindplan was something that was coming to my mind. And you can have your own social media, or you can connect um, with these platforms. Then there's Mariwala as well, Mariwala Health as well, that have a list of like queer affirmative therapists. Um, so again, right, like based on your specialization, I'll send you the platforms that you can register to. Thank you for putting up that question.
Thank you so much, Sajeev sir, for
Thanks.
asking so insightful question, and you really went deep into the topic, and you make that session engaging as well. And thank you so much, ma'am, for addressing all the question of the host as well as the the direct queries that were also coming from the people. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, this was all for our podcast of today. I hope the people who are here with patience till last have enjoyed the session, have got some new information, something relevant for themselves. And yeah, it was really a very nice session with you, ma'am. A first experience with you, and that was also so wonderful in the first term also. So thank you so much. We are just looking forward to have much more engaging sessions with you in future as well with PsyConnect. And to all the people who are here, we are just looking forward to see you in our coming sessions also that are entail for the month of January. So yeah, this was all for today, and thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us.
Yeah, I would just say one thing. Shoki, you have your hands raised up, so I'm okay to sort of take questions if one,
I think
if you have.
that was my mistake.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
that's all right.
sure.
Then that's nice. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to let you know that I'm also offering and starting a peer supervision space in the month of March. I'll be sharing the details if any of you would be interested. So that would offer a variety of work that we can sort of discuss. One is definitely how to go about setting up private practice, and the others would be um, queries that you might have, doubts that you might have, discussions that you might have to bring in based on your clients, right? Or and uh, that is open to not just therapists, clinical psychologists, social workers. So that is what I'll share the structure, but I'm thinking to open up your supervision space in the month of March. That would again we can be discussing about more details about private practice in depth, again how to network and everything. So yeah, if anybody is interested, let me know, and I would be sharing the dates soon. So just wanted to share
You
that.
can share
And
the
thank
details with me, ma'am. I would be sharing the complete
you can
details or whatever you will share in the community as well.
Sure. Sure. I'll do. I haven't prepared the like a formal this thing right now because I'm in the process of it. As I said, it's in March that I would be starting. But thank you so much for suggesting that, Nandini. I'll share with you and you can forward it. Thank you so much for having me today.
For sure. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah, ma'am. So can we
All
leave
right.
upon the meeting?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.